Maybe you don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, 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 this time power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 90 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. I am actually in rainy, cold, and sticky Cincinnati, Ohio right now, my hometown. And is it possible to be cold and sticky at the same time and not good sticky like rock? Yes, it is. If you've not been to the Midwest or the South in the spring or summer, you can't possibly understand. I'm here staying at my friend Brian Flick's house for a few days before I fly off to Houston to MC Collegiate Nationals. And then I'll come back, spend a few days in the red, and then drive westward, homeward. It's been a crazy few weeks, and yesterday I was actually starting to feel a little bad, like it had been forever since I put an episode out. But it was really only 12 days ago, and if you count the extra episodes that our patrons get, I put out 12 podcast episodes in March. And while objectively I know that's plenty, I still feel a little bad because, well, that's how addiction works, and I'm addicted to this thing. I haven't just been sitting around, though. I've been recording quite a bit and working a lot. We had a great turnout for the Performance Climbing Coach Seminar in Columbia, Maryland, and I was really honored not only to present and coach alongside a group of great coaches, but to get to work with and learn from so many coaches who attended. Big thanks to everyone who came out, and special thanks to Lawrence for playing me our theme song at 2 times speed. Honestly, it's an EDM banger that way, but if I find out y'all are listening at 2 times speed, I'm just going to start putting this out at half speed. So, there. From Columbia, I met up with Nate. We spent a week working with the community at Sport Rock in Virginia, which was awesome. It means so much to have a new community welcome us in, and I'm already looking forward to the next time we get out there. It's definitely one of those gyms that we love to go to, with the type of community that we really love to work with. Big thanks to Travis Thompson for starting the ball rolling in that leg of the trip. And we're really humbled by the number of people who came out, some for 3 workshops in a row. So yeah, big thanks to the Sport Rock crew. And while I was there, I had the chance to sit down with an accomplished coach and athlete duo, both of whom I really admire, Taylor Reed and Bella Jariel. Taylor's been coaching for like 15 years, and it's really his connection to his athletes that I wanted to explore. He says that his proudest moments are when his kids thank him for teaching them something non-climbing related. And there's a great moment in this conversation with Bella, and having watched the pride on his face when she was talking, I believe that 100%. He's also really proud of giving his athletes a broad skill base, including twin 16-year-old boys who were able to, on their first year climbing V10 outside, were able to climb 22 of them. And then he helped coach them through a big send later in their life. And we talk about that in this interview. It's actually what got me interested in talking to Taylor, was seeing the posts about this send. And he's recently started a website, betaangel.com. It's beta-angel, angel.com, that I think is going to end up being a really great resource for the training and coaching communities, as well as for athletes. It's really fascinating, and I'll tell you more about it on the back end of this conversation. Let's get into this thing. You'll hear in here how proud Taylor is of his work with Bella, and that's for really, really good reason. She was 2017 youth national champion in speed, and at the Pan American Championships, she walked away with gold in speed, bronze in bouldering, and silver in the Olympic combined format. And she's qualified for the U.S. youth team in all 4 disciplines last year. So bouldering, sport, and speed, the 3 that we know. And the new Olympic combined format is also a discipline. So all 4 disciplines last year, she made the U.S. youth team. She's a crusher and a big-time contender, which I think is really exciting for both of them. And that sort of success doesn't happen by accident. And I really wanted to know what that relationship looks like. So let's get into it.
Maybe don't know.
Bella says she's stubborn, and I totally agree. She is very stubborn. But she also is very, very willing to try new things. Incredibly willing to try new things.
This time to build power. This time to build power. This time.
We may end up having we're right across the street from a fire station, so there's probably going to be fire trucks, and who knows what kind of noise the metro is going to make. But I think the city sounds are kind of cool. So,
Okay.
So no worries if we hear a bunch of sounds. Not going to slow us down at all. Let's start by, how long have you been climbing, Bella?
I've been climbing since I was 7 years old, so almost 9 years.
Almost 9 years. I think I first met you when you were like 12 or something, 11
Yeah.
or 12 in the red, and you were like 2.5 feet tall or something like that, a little tiny thing. How long have you two been working together, Taylor?
I'd say probably about 4 to 5 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I first started coaching her when I took over the youth team in Rockville, and we immediately picked up some private lessons and just kind of hit it off and kept going since.
Yeah, and that brings up the point that I really want to talk about with you guys is that I'm an observer, so I sit on Facebook and look at all of the things that are going on and really try to understand what's happening in the climbing world, especially with coaches and athletes. And I see a lot of your athletes, Taylor, post things. They're tagging you in it. They're giving you credit for a lot of their later success after they're gone from the team and they've moved away or whatever. And I see you, I hear your pride in your posts. I see your pride in your posts with these athletes that have been, out of your care, so to speak, for a while. And I think that's fascinating. I think that sort of relationship is really, really cool. And you started right off by saying, we hit it off. That's really important. When Bella, when you guys first started working together, was that something that you noticed? That it was like, oh, we mesh really well as coach and climber?
Yeah, I definitely noticed that. I'm a pretty stubborn person, but I think I've had a lot of success with Taylor, like when it's come to competitions and stuff, but also training. It's also been going very well.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there something, Taylor, that you think is indicative of that early on when you're working with a climber? How do you know you're hitting it off? Like, is it the way they respond to you? Is it a feeling? What is it?
So I've thought about that, actually. It's a great question. And I think it has to do with, I think it does come down to fit. And that fit is often indicated by, I think, teaching style to some degree. So with me, there's a lot of iteration, a lot of, it's primarily a learning style. And Bella says she's stubborn, and I totally agree. She is very stubborn. But she also is very, very willing to try new things. Incredibly willing to try new things. And often when you iterate, you just sort of, I don't know, I like to say, and I know other people have said this before, ready, fire, aim. fire again, aim, fire again, and you just
Right.
you just continue to iterate at whatever it is that you're doing, and she does that very well, and she's always open to doing that sort of thing.
Yeah. Is that something that, Bella, that you found that you were missing with other coaches? And we don't have to name any names, but and there's nothing wrong with missing that with other coaches. You know, some coaches and some climbers or athletes, period, just connect and some don't. And that's totally okay. Did you respond differently to other coaches in the past?
I mean, I've had coaches in the past that I've really connected with, but
Yeah.
most of them are either really far away or they just have a completely different style than Taylor.
Yep.
Like most of the coaches I've seen, like it's all about conditioning and that sort of style, and
Right.
I've liked it, but it's not necessarily like what plays like my strengths and weaknesses.
Yep. Okay.
We have a sort of it's actually this whole point about strengths and weaknesses and what plays to them, especially with her, it feeds off of both of us. So for example, we tend to talk a lot about climbs, tend to focus on movement, technique, movement economy. And often we're just sitting there talking about this thing, and maybe she'll try one move and then we'll chat about it again. But often that means that the training aspect of it kind of gets lost. It especially got lost a little bit more in the early years.
Mhm.
And I sort of just, assumed that she'd be getting climbing in as a result with,
Right.
in other ways. And, as we've grown together, I've realized that I've had to pick up on that a bit, because we do just focus on movement and technique. It's the training side gets a little bit lost. And so as a result, sometimes, I feel like I'm doing great by her. She's doing really well. But on the other hand, every single time I see a weakness in her, I also recognize that that's a failure on my part. And so we get one another to some degree, to a large degree. But on the other hand, we also have to be cognizant of those of how it is that we spend our time together, and where we normally choose to spend our time, so that we can
Right.
figure out how to close those gaps.
Yeah, totally. So do you then respond to realizing that there's this weakness in the game there? Do you respond, Taylor, by learning about those things or sending her to someone else, or what's the general response there?
That's a fantastic question. All of the above, actually.
Okay.
So obviously I was up at the PCC this weekend, kind of a coaches conference, and you were there teaching us, as well as Steve Bechtel and a bunch of really, really intelligent individuals. And I just knew that they do energy system training really well, that they do strength and conditioning, and that's one of my weaknesses. So I knew I should probably go. On the other hand, she goes down to pretty regularly down to Atlanta to train
Right.
with the great coaches down at Stone Summit, and that is really important that she does that, so that she picks up from other people. What she can't necessarily get from me.
Yep. I think that's really cool that both of you are able to make that switch, that you, Taylor, can say, yeah, you should go learn from these other coaches as well, and that, Bella, you can go to those other coaches and then be open to coming back and still talking with Taylor about those things and whatever else. If you notice a weakness in your game, Bella, is it something that you then talk to Taylor about? Do you just bring that straight up to him?
Yeah, immediately, especially after competitions when there's like a boulder or route and there's something I just don't quite get or I can't figure out, or there's something I did wrong. Taylor's always the first one I tell.
Yeah. So you guys have been working together since you were like 12 or 13?
I think 13?
Somewhere in there.
Okay.
It's been so long.
What was that communication like between adult male, 13-year-old girl? Because I know that competitions are an emotional thing for all of us, not just for women. They're emotional for everyone. So when you come out of a competition and you're emotional, like, I suck at this, I need to learn to do this, how do you handle that?
So it depends. When she was younger, I mean, she did win a lot, and I often wasn't at the national level comps,
Right.
just because it wasn't my thing to go to nationals.
Sure, sure.
So often that was, other coaches dealing with that, because she often knows a lot of the coaches out there. I did happen to go to Austria to coach her
Cool.
at the World
The Worlds,
Championships,
yeah.
and there was that one was challenging for both of us, and she didn't do as well as she had hoped in bouldering, and some research into psychology suggests that your athlete has to be ready to take criticism,
Yeah.
constructive criticism, obviously.
Yep.
But if they're not, then you trying to be critical of them doesn't necessarily work so well.
Sure,
So after most competitions, we always go over our comps, but I always ask her, is it okay? Can we go check out these problems and see where you can do better? She's 99% of the time always says yes. In Austria, she wasn't ready.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing was I went through the all of the problems and showed her where I had failed her. That was I think at least that was challenging for me.
Yeah,
but
totally.
But it also led us down a path that got us back on track for the next international competition, where she did very well at.
That's really, really cool. Can we dig into that Austria comp a little bit? Is it okay to go into that?
Yeah, of
Okay.
course. Mhm.
So, what about that comp, Bella, made it so hard for you to immediately be analytical and look at it like you normally do?
Well, the first part is definitely it was my first combined competition, so it was a totally new experience for me. Like
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing before then. I was trying all these new training things, and I had all these expectations,
Right,
and it was just really difficult about that. But after I got over the disappointment of finishing, I realized there's so much I can learn from this, considering it's like my first combined competition.
Yep.
So after all those failures, I was able to pick everything apart and see like everything that I did wrong and that I can improve upon, rather than just failure.
But it took some time before you were
Yeah,
able to
definitely.
look at that. Was it your first Worlds as well, or?
No.
Okay. Where was the Worlds previously?
I was in China, Guangzhou.
Okay, so you had done some big traveling for
Yeah.
world competitions before.
hmm
What do you think made the expectations different for this one?
This was the first time that I had made it for all three. So not only did
Gotcha.
I make it for like the combined format, I also actually made top 5 in all
Oh,
three.
yeah.
So,
Yep.
and also I had the opportunity to try and get the Olympic combined slot at Buenos Aires. So
Yep.
that was also a lot of stress too.
Sure, totally. How old were you then?
This is just last year. So
So you were 16?
I turned 16 right after the competition.
Okay. Almost 16. Ooh, boy, that's an emotional time
Yup.
period without worlds and Olympic spots, and oh man. What made you, Taylor, go switch gears from here's what we normally do. We break down this competition. We talk about exactly what went wrong. What made you switch gears to I'm going to let her do her thing and I'm going to explain to her where I went wrong?
Well, her emotions at the time,
Yeah.
which we were both emotional about it, but
Sure.
obviously I have a few years on her, so and I wanted to, and I knew that I had built up a decent amount of trust, and so I knew that I didn't want to just walk away from her, and so but I also knew that she probably wasn't going to listen to constructive criticism about how well she did.
Right.
There were definitely some operational errors that she made on her part, but it wasn't important to go into those. It was important to move forward. And sometimes that means both from a performance standpoint, sometimes that means, in terms of the way you handle a competition, but other times it means, like how you develop your body in terms of technique, the physicality of it, the mental side of it, whatever it is. But
Right.
sometimes you just need to switch gears a little bit, and both in terms of how you approach a competition or the aftermath of a competition, but then also the prep for the next competition. And so we
Right.
had about 6 weeks or something to train for the next one. And so there was we just went into it. What are we going to do differently this time? And there were some big changes, and they required kind of a lot. And but I got her buy-in, and at least I think she agreed with it initially. She's nodding. But it was a little bit radical to do what we did. So
Yeah.
basically, to make it very simple, we completely disregarded sport climbing, the sport climbing discipline. Didn't put her on rope almost at all, and just focused on bouldering and speed. And we also changed up her climbing style. She's a very, very dynamic climber.
Right.
She latches holds. She's just very good at that. But a lot of what I saw out in Innsbruck, Austria, was her inability to get her center of gravity higher in a more controlled
Right.
position. And
Right.
so figuring out how to teach that it's not really my style personally. I like to throw too, but figuring out how to teach that was definitely a work in progress. But it seemed to do okay.
Cool. You said something really important in there, that you got her buy-in. I think that's a really big part of this that some coaches forget, and we tend to forget it. You know, when we see ourselves as an authority figure, or the person putting the plan together, or whatever it is, it's really easy to forget that this is a mutual agreement, and without Bella saying, yeah, I think this is a good idea, I'm all in, you're not going to get nearly the same results out of it, right?
No, definitely not.
How was it for you hearing, I want to change your climbing style a little bit, and here's why?
Well, honestly, I think it was a mutual decision.
Okay.
Because I sat down
Cool.
with him. I was like, okay, I am not comfortable with this performance at this competition. What do we need to do together to make this change? And then we discussed options, and then we talked about the upsides and downsides, and we made an agreement.
Man, that's so freaking cool. How do you, going into the next comp, temper those expectations that were happening going into Innsbruck?
That's a really good question. How did we temper those expectations? I think on the one hand, it was knowing the specifics. So sport climbing, I just knew she wasn't going to do particularly well, and we just made that call. But then when it came down to it, we honestly, I'm not really sure, to be honest. I'll just go ahead and say that.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it's a great question. I haven't really given it.
What do you
given it a lot
think,
of thought.
Bella? Was there anything that you thought about during that time to kind of get rid of some of those expectations, or did just the performance in the comp that you weren't comfortable with, did that drop the expectations on its own?
I think just the fact that I had gotten over my worst fear of doing absolutely terrible in everything.
Yeah.
It's after that happened, I was like, okay, nothing worse can happen, so I'm just gonna climb.
Yeah, cool.
And we did just sort of have a plan, and we just sort of jumped into it. Once we both talked about it and we knew what we needed to do. And there was a lot of iteration while we were for the rest of it, but we did really just apply ourselves to it. Me with thinking about it, and her with doing it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the nuts and bolts of this thing a little bit. I know you're in school, Bella, and you miss a lot of school to do these big comps, and it's got to be stressful to be in here practicing every day, going to school, having to catch up at school. Talk to me a little bit about that. How does that affect your training, your climbing, your school?
I mean, definitely before Worlds, I was training a lot, almost overtraining, because I wasn't going to school. So I basically had all the time in the world just to go to the gym, to do running, just do whatever. And I honestly feel like that negatively affected how I performed as well, because it's all the pressure was on climbing and performing this one competition. But then when school started, before Pan Am's, it actually felt like it was better, because my focus wasn't all on climbing.
Right.
It's like, even though school was sort of taking up some of my time, it's like I had something to like divert my attention, but then also I was still trying hard when I was in the gym.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And that was definitely one of those programming failures we had to realize, is that, when we were trying to train for 3 disciplines, it was like 6 days a week sometimes.
Sure.
And that's a lot on the body, and especially she had been training so hard for nationals to try to make the final 2 teams, the speed and sport. And we just went right into training for worlds after that. And she was exhausted after nationals. She needed to take some time off, and she did a little bit, but it was just one of those programming errors.
Yeah, it's tough with those big objectives looming to say, oh, we need to take rest right now. That's really tough to do. And you work a full-time job outside of coaching for climbing, right?
Right.
Yeah. So how does the coaching work with you guys? Are you there in person? How often?
So I'd say most of the time I see her probably once every 2 weeks.
Okay.
Lately I've been seeing her a lot, probably a decent amount more, probably once a week. But most of the time what I'll do is we'll essentially go over what we need to go over, whatever I think it is, whether it's a weakness or whatever she thinks it is, to be honest. And whether it's a weakness, a strength we want to hit, some type of slightly more complex exercise, whatever it is, something I need to focus on. Like, I think one time I spent half an hour. We spent half an hour experimenting with getting her to be able to do high steps better.
Sure.
And not on the wall at all. So it was just trying to figure out how to get her into the right position so that she could get her flexibility on her own, because I don't see her all the time. I'm not there constantly going like, hey, change this, change this, change this.
Right.
So often I'll send the plan, and her mom's, by the way, is amazing.
Yeah.
And has been amazing, has been able to essentially be that liaison, to be able to kind of communicate it, because I sometimes don't communicate the best.
So her mom, Jenny, seems to be really actively involved.
She
and
is
always smiling and always happy. So
yeah,
that's got to be a huge asset for both of you.
yeah.
I would consider her my assistant coach, or to him at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, she really is. And parents who get, and when it comes to Jenny, she's gotten involved, and she has made the process so much easier for me and for Bella. And yeah, hands down.
Have you seen parents get involved that make the process more difficult? And again, we don't have to name names, but
I would say that, flipping that around again, most of my successes have been, there has been a parent, usually a mother, who has gotten involved to the extent that they facilitate the relationship in any way that makes sense.
right.
And that has been fairly important. I've thought about that a bit, of what type of dynamic works really well.
Yeah.
And there have definitely been times where there hasn't been a constant presence, but they still are supportive in the background.
Yeah.
I think that there have been times where a parent, specifically like 10, 15 years ago when I first started, where I was willing to do more, and the parent would essentially say, oh, it's a little bit too much to get the kid into the gym. It's not something, like, I think one parent asked me, well, is this really, are they really going to be able to get a scholarship like this? This was of an 11-year-old, a scholarship later on. And I was just like,
talk about expectations.
Yeah. So I think from that perspective, there can be a negative thing to some degree. But I'd prefer to focus on the parents that facilitate really help.
Yeah, totally. And I see so many of them, right? I've had Connie Leitner on the podcast, and she's really great with Kai. I see her at comps and outdoors all the time, and she might stand back and wring her hands a little bit, but she doesn't micromanage, and she lets Kai do his thing. And I've climbed a little bit with Rudy Ruana and Drew, and they're great, so it's really interesting to see the parent dynamic and the coach dynamic with the parent as well. How much do you guys talk over the plan with assistant coach Jenny?
I mean, normally she's not like there with us when me
Right.
and Taylor are talking about stuff. But what I found is, okay, so I'll do my whole session with Taylor, and then after that, he'll debrief with my mom for like 30 minutes to an hour and tell her like everything that went on.
Right.
So I'm not necessarily there, but I know that it happens.
Yeah. Yep. Do you talk to your mom after sessions? Like, is that do you vent to her when things are going wrong? How does that work with you two?
I actually don't find myself telling my mom when things are, I mean, when it's getting really bad, then I tell her, but when there's a little issue, normally I just tell it directly to Taylor.
Okay. Cool.
So things aren't lost in communication.
Yeah.
And normally behind the scenes, there's actually like if I send something, it's to Jenny, and then Jenny takes a look at it, and then she basically says, Taylor, I don't understand this. You're being an idiot. And so there's usually a little bit of there's that word again, iteration sometimes before Belle's ever sees it.
Yeah.
But no, Bella is exactly right. She will talk directly to me when she thinks something isn't working quite right, and usually I will take stock, and I love it when she does it because it means that I'm learning.
Yeah. So the comps that you do get to go to, what's that look like day of? I know that when you're in ISO, you guys aren't necessarily communicating at that point, but leading up to that point, what's that look like between you two? Is there talking going on? Is there some kind of like locker room type pep talk? What's that look like?
Is this like day of the comp? Is that what you're interested in?
Yeah, day of, morning, before ISO.
I actually do go into isolation with her. Often I ignore her in isolation. Most coaches find me really funny because I end up liking to talk to coaches and talk shop while in isolation.
Right.
And then Bella usually is off on her own, playing cards, talking with friends, that sort of thing, and I leave her alone. And then pretty much to a T, there's always this, oh, I should probably be focusing on Bella at some point. Oh, she hasn't started warming up yet. Oh, I should go say something. She's very, very independent, though, in isolation. She knows what she needs to do. Yeah.
So is it a conscious decision to leave her alone and let her do her thing?
Yeah, I don't like to micromanage unless I need to. If I will absolutely micromanage the heck out of someone, and I've done it with Bella before, but rarely because she warms up really well and she just knows what she needs to do, and I don't want to mess with her mindset. Right.
Do you think that's advantageous for you, Bella?
Yeah, because I've been to so many isolations and so many competitions. Like, I already know my routine the moment I walk in there. Like,
Right.
I've done this 100 times.
You got this thing down.
Yeah, so, I mean, we have an understanding. He doesn't feel like he has to interfere. I don't feel like he has to interfere. So I just finish my routine, go into the competition, and normally I'm just fine.
Are there times during in ISO, during a comp, or otherwise, when you're in the gym and Taylor's not there, are there times when you're like, oh my gosh, I'm glad he can't see me do this right now, or Taylor would want me to do this, so that's what I'm going to do? Does that ever happen? Do you ever think that?
I mean, sometimes he'll give me a workout or something.
Yeah.
And it'll be really hard. It'll be so hard. I won't be able to do like anything. I can just like sort of see his face in the background just laughing at me as I'm like falling. Because some of the stuff, it's not like something that I do with him. He just sort of hands me the workout and says,
Right.
okay, do this exercise or this climb. So yeah, there's definitely times like that.
Yeah.
I have a bad habit of laughing at her when she falls. I think it's a great habit personally, but people look at me a little strange when that happens.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I think that's a good thing. I think keeping it lighthearted is super smart. It's a relationship that isn't just predicated on Taylor, you're teaching her what she should be doing. Everything you've said is we work on getting her to high step higher, and to me that indicates that you guys are playing around with it. It's not like I know best, you listen to me, you do this. right now or else. You know,
Oh God, no.
it's not that kind of thing. I can see that. And I asked that question because last night when I walked around the corner during the workshop that you were in, Bella, and all of the team kids are like making up silly dinos, I was like, this is how it works with team kids. They're totally off task 5 minutes after putting them on task. So, but I think that's an interesting part of being a kid, being a youth competitor, and you've grown up, you know, you're beyond being a kid now, but you grew up in this time where you were able to be creative and have fun and be silly and make up things with your friends and be willing to fail over and over again in front of them, you know. And that's what I saw last night when I walked around the corner. And that's why I didn't stop it, because I'm like, oh, they're doing exactly what I want them to be doing, just not in the way that I said to do it. So I would guess that there are times where you deviate from the plan a little bit and you're off with your friends and you're like looking around like, oh, I'm glad he can't see me right now, you know. So outdoors, I know you're really interested in climbing outdoors as well. Is there coaching that goes on there? Do you guys talk about the outdoor climbing stuff, or is it all comp related?
Do you want to tell them about the last time we went outdoors?
Yeah. So normally, like, competition has been sort of like a side thought for us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we'll be like, okay, there's a trip coming up, so we'll work around it, but we never really like intentionally planned for it. But this time I actually set a few goals and we went outdoors to Mount Gretna in Pennsylvania, and he came with me.
Yeah.
And I think that was definitely one of the best outdoor trips I've had.
Yeah? What made it
sure.
so good?
I'm not sure. I just had a really good day, and he was putting me on great climbs, and everyone was really motivated, and I felt like everyone was behind me, and it just felt like I had a great group of support in order to keep doing those climbs even when I was completely exhausted.
Right. So you're not just looking to tailor to help you be a better competitor. You want to be a good all-around climber no matter what it is you're doing. So you're looking to tailor for advice in all of those realms.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. Is that what you set out for? Was that your idea going in, was to, you know, help build her into a climber, shape her into a climber rather than just a comp climber?
I think with all of my kids, I mean, ever since I started coaching, I've always wanted to get them outdoors. And there are definitely very strong differences between coaching for outdoors versus coaching for competition.
Mm-hmm.
And I consider it a kind of a badge of honor that I've had some success in both. The outdoors really helps build the trust in the relationship. It helps us actually sort of come together because it's a novel experience. It's different, especially for the kids who aren't getting out every single weekend. And so being able to go out into this beautiful area far from other people and having all of those, those weird little things pop up. I don't know, like wind, it just sort of, it's different, and it's a different experience. And as a result, you end up getting closer, and that allows us to build the trust that we need to do better at competitions, but then also do better outside in a number of different ways. And she gets really psyched about wanting to go outside and climb hard boulders or even hard routes outside. Yeah. I just think that's win-win all over the place.
Yeah. And when you go outside, does it become more of a partnership role? Or is it still coach student? How did that feel to you, Bella? Was it more like, oh, I'm just going climbing and this is a climbing partner?
Yeah, I would say it more like that. It never felt like, it wasn't like the moment I got off the wall when we're in a session, he's like, okay, you need to change this and this.
Right.
It was just, okay, I fell. What do I do? Right. Not necessarily like he's already telling me this is what you need to change or this is what you're doing wrong.
Right. Was that a conscious change on your part, or did you just fall into that because you're a climber and that's what you do?
Honestly, I feel like it's almost like if like outside is sort of a little bit more, I don't know, it's just a little bit more important to take a step back and sort of allow the enjoyment of the outdoor to take place. And there's certainly coaching which happens outdoors, but it's not as focused or intense.
Right.
Maybe intense is a better word than focused, I guess.
Yep.
Than the indoor stuff that we do. And so she'll go several burns, and I'll just be completely quiet, and sometimes I just turn my mind off and I don't even think about the analysis. But other times I'm thinking about the analysis, but realizing she's probably going to get it on her next go. She's probably going to figure it out. Her body's probably going to figure it out. Yeah.
That's cool. You're totally willing to just let her work through it, make mistakes, figure it out on her own.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Has it always been that way?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
Well, we don't go outside a ton together. When we are indoors, I'm much less likely to just let a go just sort of stand on its own.
Right.
But outdoors, when we have gone out, I would say it's been like that. Cool. At least that's my understanding. But you can correct me if I'm wrong, kiddo.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah, and that brings us right back to outdoors is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you for the podcast, Taylor. And I appreciate you talking to Bella, because I think we rarely get to hear about what the relationship's like between a coach and an athlete. But one of the things that really made me want to talk to you was seeing these posts on Facebook from your former students and obviously people that you still care about. And I don't remember who it was, but I believe it was something in Bishop.
Oh, the Swarm.
It was the Swarm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you have a question, or I can?
No, just tell me about that a little bit.
Sure. So I started teaching twin Israeli boys back in 2005 or so, and basically the deal was I teach them for free, and they contribute points to my team, so I can try to win the regional cup. Yeah. And we just started going outside a lot more, and I developed them from like V3 to I think V11, V12 is when around 16, 17 years of age. And then they ended up going out to the Swarm last year, and obviously they're much older now, like, I don't know, early 20s, mid 20s, I have no idea. Mm-hmm. But they went out to the Swarm, and they were having some trouble in the late spring of 2017. So they contacted me and they said, "We need to figure out how to do this this boulder. We really need some help." And so I took a look at all the video on the Swarm, looked at all the beta, looked at the essentially how the moves are done based upon the beta. And sent them some thoughts. They also sent me video of their tries. And then over the summer, I think we iterated like once or twice, and then early in the start of the fall season in 2017, first Itai sent it, and then Eden contacted me because he hadn't sent it that session, and so we talked a little bit about it, and he was able to send it, I think, on his next time up there.
Oh, so, man,
yeah,
that's so cool. I remember seeing the post, and besides the fact that these two twin brothers sent it in back-to-back sessions, which is cool enough, I was really impressed by them giving you credit and your pride in what they had done. And I just think that's huge, and it was so evident. You just said I developed them from V3 to V11 or V12. I think if I asked either of them, they would say, he developed us from V3 to today, V13 or whatever. I think that's the way, based on that post, that they would phrase it.
And sorry, that is a little bit of pride when I say I developed them. We all developed one another.
Totally.
Be honest. Yeah. But I mean, they have it's interesting. They're identical twins, and yet they have completely different climbing styles. They're identical twins, and yet they have completely different grip positions that they use. Yeah. And I've thought a lot about why that is. And what I keep coming back to is sort of like how much time we spent together and mistakes we made in training and things like that. And they're just really cool people, and that's one of the things I love about developing a climber, working with a climber, is being able to eventually, like 5 years down the line, I don't know, go, hang out with them, go, find out what they're doing after college. I think one of my kids, we went out on her 21st birthday and we had a beer together, and I'd been teaching her since she was 13. We texted the photo to her mother, which was hilarious. It's just these moments kind of outside of climbing that really get me like excited to actually, to go back into climbing and do better. And I love having, those deep relationships. And they're just a lot of fun, and I don't know, they help me get through my day job.
Yeah, totally. Bella, do you feel like the relationship that you and Taylor have is not only helping you become a better climber, but a better human in any ways?
Definitely. That reminds me of a specific time.
Tell me.
So my mom has all these pictures of, I'll backtrack a little. So I had to do this arcing workout that he gave me, and it was terrible. I had to do 30 minutes on the wall, and I just had to keep going up and down with like very little rest, and I was exhausted. So my mom has like all these pictures of me lying on the ground in pain, and then of course she puts them all in this giant collage and sends it to Taylor.
Right.
And Taylor really wanted to show it to everyone, and I was like, no, please don't. It's so embarrassing. But I think after I listened to him and he told me, just show it to someone. Like, just take pride in who you are, and just don't take that embarrassment. Like, just have pride in yourself. Yeah. So I finally sent it to my friend, and he laughed, but I got over it, and I think that made me a better person, and that had nothing to do with climbing. So I definitely feel that way.
Cool. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Any final words from either of you just about coaching or about being coached that you think is really important for people to hear?
Well, first off, I do want to say thanks, Chris, for inviting us out here. This was really awesome, and it's great to learn a little bit more about you as well. Yeah. Honestly, I think that in any type of relationship, you're looking for that fit. You're looking for to click, and not everything is going to work out perfectly between every person or every coach and every athlete, and that's okay. But hopefully eventually you find that fit that and are able to develop yourself both as an athlete and as a person. And I fully believe that I think we should all at least try to aspire to it, and I continue to try to work towards that.
Cool. Any last thoughts, Bella? I'm putting you on the spot here.
I would say that always make sure you communicate with your coach, and that you guys always have an understanding, or things can be lost. And it's also a really good way to build your relationship. Yeah.
Man, you guys are too cool. And I love that you just sit out here and talk, because in class you're really quiet. In the gym you're pretty quiet. When it comes to people outside of your peer group, So I love that you're able to just open up in front of Taylor and talk openly and be like, your workouts are terrible. And so thank you guys a ton for sitting down and chatting with me and being so open.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Oh man, that was such a fun conversation to have, and it's fascinating to me to be able to get a little bit of a window into how that dynamic works. Thanks to Bella and Taylor for taking time out of their schedules to coordinate and to make this happen. This is so much more valuable to me as a coach and as a human in general than knowing the details of whatever training program Taylor's creating for Bella. I don't need to know how long she's hanging or how many minutes she spends on the moon board. This is how many minutes she spends on the moon board. this is the stuff that makes me a better coach, better partner. And that's not to say that the physical side isn't important. It most certainly is, but it's the easy part. And speaking of which, you'll find a link in the show notes to a collage of those photos that Bella talks about, her exhaustion album that we discuss, with her permission, of course, and with great joy from Jenny, her mom. So go check those out. They're pretty amazing. Now, I just submitted my coaching profile for Taylor's new site, betaangel.com. You can find a link directly to it in the show notes on the website, and you should definitely check it out. The Beta Angel project is collecting data and research about climbing and then translating it into practical application, as well as doing video analysis of high-level movement and creating a platform for in-depth coaching profiles. It's really a fascinating site, and it's perfect for someone like me who just doesn't have the time to try and wade through research and data on my own. I would rather look and be able to see what someone who's taken the time and who thinks through it, see what they feel about it. So this is a really great resource. Again, it's betaangel.com, beta-angel, angel.com. And there's links to it in the show notes and on the website. All right, I'm out. You all are zealots, which means I am slammed with work, so I gotta go. And until next time, you can find us at powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find us on all the social medias at Power Company Climbing. All of the social medias, that is, except for the Twitter, because we don't tweet, we scream like eagles.
This time, to build power. This time 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 to build. 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 This time